Now, Joe, I know we're tired. Everyone's a little tired this morning.
Yeah.
The last time we had Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney on of New York.
It was a very mindful conversation.
It was a little reactive.
We're both believers. No, we're both believers in mindfulness.
No.
And we always say, don't be reactive.
Mr. Maloney, you were reactive. Joe, you were reactive. And I want you both to take 3 deep breaths and try this again. It's going to be okay because you guys are actually friends. Joining us now, Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney of New York. He is chairman of the DCCC. Also with us for this conversation, MSNBC political analyst David Plouffe. He served as a senior White House advisor to President Obama and managed his 2008 campaign.
Also very mindful.
Yeah, he is mindful. And host of MSNBC's Politics Nation and president of the National Action Network. Reverend Al Sharpton is with us as well. What a great group. MVP.
Exactly. So, Rev, let's start with you. What did you think of the speech last night?
I thought that it was an excellent speech. It was well delivered, and I thought it was substantive. He did not try to become a firing orator. That is not his style. He almost was a conversationalist. And, as one that is a minister, you can be one with fiery oratory to try and inspire people, or you can soothe them into listening to you. And he was like having a conversation with the American people. I thought it was very effective, but it was substantive. I certainly was happy to hear him encourage the Congress and Senate to pass the George Floyd Act. He was very specific, and I think that he did himself and the nation a real service. I was very disappointed in Tim Scott's rebuttal, but I was more than impressed with the president's speech.
Why were you disappointed with Tim Scott's rebuttal?
I don't think he rebutted. I think that he came with a lot of talking points from the Republicans. He never addressed the specific things that the president laid out. It was more sloganeering, and it was more bowing to the throne of Donald Trump. And I've met Tim Scott, talked to him. I think he's brighter than that and better than that. I think he really embarrassed himself last night.
Congressman, how did Joe Biden do? How do you think he helps your cause as the head of the DCCC?
Well, first, Joe, I'm reminded of the wisdom of the ages, happy wife, happy life. So I think the goal this morning should not be to, you got it. So,
yeah, exactly.
Look, I think he did great. I mean, come on, the guy's talking about 4 more years of preschooling, 2 years of pre-K, 2 years of community college free, talking about childcare. He's talking about paid family and medical leave. These are things that the working and middle class families that I represent in the Hudson Valley of New York know and understand and care about. Goes right to the family budget on top of the rescue plan, which is, putting shots in arms, money in pockets, and the jobs and infrastructure plans. I think we're doing big things, and the American people are going to feel it. And I think it's going to be a big deal come next year when the Republicans are still talking about nothing, and we've got a record of results.
So, David Plouffe, timing also is everything. Bill Clinton could tell us all that. He beat George H.W. Bush running against the economy that fourth quarter after the election. It ended up being pretty strong. Joe Biden also inheriting an economy on the rebound. We just got breaking news that the U.S. economy grew at a 6.4% annual rate in the first quarter. Jobless claims also down to new pandemic lows.
Right. Well, first of all, Joe, I would say this. Obviously, Congressman Maloney's job, first and foremost, with his DCCC hat on, is to retain a majority. But one of our problems is, we get done with one election and we look through the prism of the next election. And we've got a bunch of crises out there, and that's one of the reasons Joe Biden's so popular, is I think he's delivered on them. Last night you had a popular president who's already done popular things in his first 100 days quite effectively, proposing popular things. And I thought, in addition to the proposals, it's how he delivered them. I agree with Reverend Sharpton. I mean, James Carville famously talked recently about the Democrats too often talk like they're from the faculty lounge. Joe Biden speaks factory floor. I mean, that was both a love letter and a speech that had a bullseye on it. It was directed to people out there who didn't go and graduate to college necessarily, certainly didn't go to post-college, folks who are working hard and have been hurt hard by this pandemic. So Midterms are always challenging. You guys know the history as well as I do. We know that. And the House is already very close. The Senate is obviously on a nice edge. But my view is the best politics here is to deliver for the American people, because that will both help you with swing voters, but also keep the base enthused. And you have to have both. This notion that it's one or the other is crazy. The math is pretty clear. You need both to have a successful election in competitive districts or competitive states.
Rev. David mentioned that James Carville interview with Vox. Let's talk a little bit about that. Democratic strategist James Carville weighing in on whether the Democratic Party needs to change its messaging. In that interview with Vox, Carville said, quote, "We lost congressional seats. We didn't pick up state legislatures. So let's not have an argument about whether or not we're off key in our messaging. We are. And we're off because there's too much jargon and there's too much esoterica, and it turns people off." Last night on MSNBC, Carville spoke more about what he sees as the problem.
We come across as just condescending to people. It's thinking that, and I know out here, Democrats out in the rest of the country feel like that they are being talked down to. And we just got to use straightforward language. And this all this faculty lounge nonsense, let those people, if I want to learn about Beowulf, I'll go ask them. But they ought to just stay out of trying to get political language, because they don't know what they're talking about.
So, Rev, in that interview with Vox, James Carville said, quote, "Wokeness is a problem. We all know it." He talked about the use of terms like Latinx, which only 3% of Latino adults say they use. 76% of adults say they've never even heard that term. What do you make of his broad argument there?
I think that he has some very important points there. The objective of communicating is to connect with who you're trying to communicate with. And I think too many times that we have people that are in the Democratic Party or that are in the left or woke that want to impress you rather than engage you. And that's why I think Biden has been effective. He engages people. He makes people feel like he's talking to them. He referred to last night when he had the conversation, got on his knee and had the conversation with George Floyd's daughter in the meeting with the family, that I was in the room with Attorney Ben Crump. That made him communicate with the whole family that he saw them as a person, as a family, a little girl, rather than coming in quoting some things that he had learned in political science, and he's talking to them as objects. And I think Carville's right. You must connect with people on the ground. We believe politics is local. You've got to talk to local people in a way that they feel you understand their life, not that you're on an ivory tower sipping lattes, talking down to the masses that you only understand intellectually.
There's a Rev once again talking about those latte liberals he's been talking about now for a couple of years. David Plouffe, let me ask you really quickly, because I remember, and then we'll get back to the congressman, but I remember hearing Barack Obama after leaving the presidency. I believe it was a Mandela speech, and he in his own gentle way was pushing back against wokeness. And he said, hey, listen, you can't tell entire swaths of the population that they can't engage in certain debates because they're white or because they're men. Or because he said, we want everybody to engage in the debate. That's how we win elections. And that took me back to, his introduction in 2004. His vision that there is not a red state America or a blue state America. We're one America, and everybody should be involved in the debate.
Right, Joe. Well, he's a former community organizer, but any good organizer will tell you that the best organizing starts with listening, not lecturing. You're not talking very much. You're listening to people, finding an opening, finding a way to engage them. So I think this is less, and I think James was clear about this in his piece. It's less about what we stand for. It's how we communicate. I mean, you have a Republican Party, sadly, you probably acutely feel this, that's increasingly getting comfortable with white supremacy. So we have to call that out, have to fight that, have to fight the George Floyd, we have to fight for the George Floyd Policing Act. But we have to remember that the people that decide elections, again, this isn't just the Trump, Obama, Biden voters. The young people who we need to vote and continue to vote, they are not by definition, is engaged in politics. They actually aren't as liberal as activists are. So we have to have a message that reaches them, engages them, that's relevant to them. Because at the end of the day, the image they need to have is Joe Biden and all the Democrats in Congress are waking up every day, running through the wall to fight for them, to increase their pay, to increase their child care, to do things like climate change, of course, criminal justice reform, of course. But we have to understand that both sides of the electoral equation, swing voters and important registration and turnout targets, if it looks like we're lecturing to them, if it looks like we're disconnected from their lives, we will be unsuccessful.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.